my fellow Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
You would know this as a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email, and all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament,
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector. You didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, They get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you gotta come in and talk to me a sec." He says, "We've made the decision, we're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show, but if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, one of the 4 principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he had gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbunda women who supposedly had been their victims.
But these were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
The only reason that I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, our pronouns are question everything. And tonight, we've got a jam-packed show. We're going to be covering the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. We're going to be looking at why the United States is attacking Syria, why U.S. warships, of course, are off the coast there, and is there a massive plot to assassinate the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, as well as we'll look at the deeper growing crisis, of course, in the Middle East tonight.
We're also going to look at Israel's lost investment as they try to brand themselves as a more secular European modern nation apart from war with Palestinians. That's gone, but we're at least going to, do the duty of looking back at what they tried to do and ask the question, why did they do that if they're going to go all in on war?
Here's a question. We'll just throw it out to you guys, and don't answer it just yet. Maybe you can put it in the chat room if you'd like. Can you guys name the gay capital of the world, the LGBTQ plus sort of center of the world, the largest per capita area in the world? You guys drop it in the chat below. See if you guys can answer that question. We're also going to today.
It's not ancient Greece. We're talking about right now.
Right now in 2023.
Yes.
Exactly. Also, we're going to look at the Justice Department being sued over their collusion, of course, with Twitter, social media. Now they've been mum on that. We know that the FBI colluded, of course, with Twitter, gave out information, purposely tried to silence voices. So we'd like to see those documents. Why are they being mum about it? Well, now they're being sued. We're going to dive into that, plus so much more as Redacted starts right now. People said Ann Arbor, Michigan. No, it's not Ann Arbor. Atlanta. No, yeah, a lot of people picking their correct answer here. Lindsey Graham's house. No, that's not exactly, but that's funny. San Francisco. You would think San Francisco.
Yeah.
People saying Asheville. Johnny Thunder says Asheville. No. Long Beach. Yeah, but a lot of people getting it correct. We'll give you the correct answer here just in moments. You might have noticed something new, though, not just Natalie's new outfit tonight, but in fact, we've got new digs around here. Many of you joined us Friday night. We had a special Friday night live stream just for our Redacted Plus community members. So it was just our members only on Friday night, and we hung out for a few hours. And it was great to have a couple hundred of you guys all hanging out with us. So we just kind of chit-chatted while we were testing out all of the new production, all of the new software, all of the new graphics, everything that the team has been building over the past few months. It looks fantastic. So one thing you'll notice is that when you do subscribe to the channel, your name will pop up here on the big screen, as well as right here on the main screen. You'll see if he says, "Welcome to the Rebellion," then you've joined.
Somebody subscribe. Show us.
Anybody
Do
subscribes,
it right now.
you'll see it.
If you're watching and you're not subscribed, it's free. Just hit that subscribe button. Yeah, we'll show you that in a minute. So yeah, I dressed for the occasion to match the graphics.
That's great.
Although there's more blue than red now, so I'll get a blue blazer.
So welcome in almost the last day of October. Halloween tomorrow, of course. There's a welcome. Saida Karama. Thank you. So see, if that's how it's now going to look, and all of the new graphics, we're really excited about that. So the team has worked really, really hard to make this show even better for you guys. So thank you guys for subscribing. This is a free show. We put it on every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and we hope that you join us every day. So anyway, but we also have a newsletter.
What else is free is our newsletter. That's a daily newsletter that goes along with this show. You go to redacted.inc to sign up and hit subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email address. It's totally free. We do not sell your email address anywhere. We don't use it for anything other than contacting you with our daily newsletter, and we have special newsletters on the weekends as well. The Monday through Thursday newsletter has news, events, not really, well, yeah, events, things you might have missed on the internet, plus a lot of the content that we're going to discuss here on this show as well. So like I said, it's totally free to sign up. It's a companion piece to this show so that you can study up or think about the things that we're going to talk about later in the day. You can subscribe for free at redacted.inc. One more time, that's Look at those people. They're enjoying it.
Yes,
they love it.
They love the Redacted newsletter.
They love coffee and the Redacted newsletter, two things that go together like chocolate and peanut butter. So subscribe for free today, redacted.inc.
Iran's proxies fire back at U.S. after airstrikes, says the New York Times. They clearly want this to be about Iran, of course. Meanwhile, Israel says it's bombed Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, the U.S. launching airstrikes in Syria, and Turkey says they're about to declare war on Israel if this further incursion continues. Are we heading for a regional war, or are we already in it? Let's ask former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter, who's watching this very, very closely and not getting a lot of sleep these days. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So are we heading for a regional war? It seems with Turkey's declaration that they would be willing to declare war on Israel, the United States launching airstrikes in Syria and Iraq, that maybe we're already there?
Well, we're definitely in a broader conflict than simply an Israeli-Hamas conflict. I think what we're seeing right now is if you view the Middle East as this giant pressure cooker, what Israel and Hamas are doing right now is just they're generating a lot of heat. There's a lot of pressure going up. So I think what we're seeing is pressure relief valves taking place. I mean, there's going to be violence in other areas related to this. The question is, can that violence be controlled so that it doesn't burst out of control? You know, what we see in, for instance, in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah is a deliberate cycle of limited violence where both sides, where Hezbollah has a need to strike. They have to politically, but they don't want this to turn into a general war. So Hezbollah strikes, Israel retaliates, but the Israeli retaliation is limited in scope. So you have this slow escalation. The same thing in what's taking place in Iraq and Syria. These militias are going to attack America. There's no doubt about it. The question now is, what is America going to do? If America overreacts, you have the danger of bringing in Iran. If America overreacts in Syria, you bring in Syria. So we're looking at basically conflicts designed to relieve pressure, but you can only do that so much. If Gaza continues to heat up and generate more pressure than the relief valves can release, then you're going to have a general war. And it's a very dangerous situation right now.
Is Israel doing the right thing for themselves? I mean, in their brains, thinking about the protection of Israel. Is this basically leading to the destruction of Israel, I guess is what I'm asking, by this massive incursion into Gaza, whatever unfolds and is unfolding in the West Bank, the massive PR campaign that, of course, Israel has spent years really promoting, birthright, come back to Israel, move back to Israel, become a part of Israel, become part of, move to Tel Aviv. If you're Jewish, live in the United States, come here. This is where you belong. Have they really shot themselves in the foot with this, or is this going to really buoy spirits and people are going to start to want to really move back to Israel?
No, I believe this is the end of Israel as it's currently defined. It was already ending. I mean, remember, before this conflict began, you had hundreds of thousands of Israelis in the streets protesting Benjamin Netanyahu's rewriting of basic law regarding the judiciary. The Israeli president saying we are on the verge of a civil war, not civil unrest, a civil war. Israelis shooting Israel. Israel is destroyed. What Israel defines itself as today, this right-wing Zionist entity, is dead. It just, it's kicking, it's thrashing, it's threatening to take down a lot of people with it, but it's over, it's finished. No matter what happens, Israel will never be the same, and it will not be as long as as long as political Zionism exists. There will always be violence, and that violence will make Israel the least attractive place in the world for people to move to. I'm not saying that Israel, the nation state, is finished. I don't believe it should be finished. I do believe that there is a state called Israel, but it cannot be this political Zionist state that exists solely upon feeding on the blood, literally, of Palestinians. That is over, and it can't. The day of Israeli exceptionalism, likewise, is finished. If Israel is going to exist, and I believe it should exist, it needs to exist as an equal amongst equals. It can no longer be this literal Jewish supremacist state that dominates and intimidates others. That's and what Israel's doing right now in Gaza is just accelerating the process of that. But the danger is, if you accelerate too fast, you could create conditions that lead to not just the destruction of political Zionism, but of Israel itself. There is a real possibility for the physical destruction of Israel if they're not careful.
I want to get your military perspective on the invasion over the weekend. Benjamin Netanyahu saying this is the second phase now of the Gaza incursion. The Cradle just released a leaked documents showing, if you go to the cradle.co, and they're pointing from the Israeli culture magazine Mekovet, published on October 28th, a leaked document issued by Israel's Ministry of Defense, Intelligence, recommending the occupation of Gaza and the total transfer of 2.3 million inhabitants into Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, pushing out all of these individuals into Egypt, basically. And now we're in the second phase of this invasion. Where do things stand with the military side of this, and what do you make of this move into Egypt?
Well, first of all, the move into Egypt, I believe, is a non-starter. I think that's an act of war. Egypt would view it as an act of war. And, Hamas doesn't have any tanks. Egypt has hundreds of them, modern tanks. And they have 2 divisions that are being brought up to combat readiness on the Sinai. If Israel really does want to commit suicide, this is one really good way to do it, because if Egypt sends 600 tanks into the Negev, Israel's got no response. And if Israel has to shift forces to respond to that, for instance, from the Northern Command, Hezbollah has a free ride straight into Haifa. Syria will retake the Golan Heights. As I said earlier, Israel is on the verge of committing suicide as a nation state. And so they need to drop this nonsense. The United States, I think, has put read Israel the Riot Act and told Netanyahu, you can't launch a full-scale assault into Gaza, or else Iran will come in, and nobody's ready for that. I mean, you can have Kamala Harris, give as many, one word, what's your advice to Iran? Don't. First of all, Iran doesn't care about Kamala Harris, and they're going to do what they're going to do based upon what America does. And America has postured itself aggressively. But if you look at the force structure that we put in place there, it's really not that much. It's not enough to turn the tide in any large-scale conflict. Israel doesn't want Iran to get involved. So what Netanyahu has done is they're carrying out a process of increasing the scope and scale of raids into Gaza to occupy limited territory for political benefit. At some point in time, the realization will come that Israel cannot defeat Hamas, and there will be a political settlement. I think what Netanyahu is trying to do is say, we destroyed the bulk of Hamas's military capability, as opposed to completely eradicating. He needs to walk away with the victory. They suffered a humiliating defeat on October 7th. Everybody's talking about this being a massacre. No, it was the total annihilation of Israel's front line of defense. The Golani Brigade, 2 battalions, got beat in a stand-up fight against Hamas. That's the reality. And it's humiliating. Their intelligence service was asleep. This is the end of Netanyahu's political career. He will not recover from this. When this war ends, and it will end, there will be an accounting domestically for Israel, if it still exists. And Netanyahu and the senior command will all be relieved of their duties because of the incompetence, some of which may be criminal in nature.
Well, you heard it here. Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, thank you for weighing in on this, and we'll keep an eye on this regional conflict as it continues to develop. Thanks so much, Scott. We appreciate it as always.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate it. And of course, just a few moments ago, we saw that Benjamin Netanyahu turned down a ceasefire agreement after a new captive video was just released. So it doesn't appear there's going to be any sort of a ceasefire agreement at any stage right now in Gaza. The United States looking to ramp up, breaking up these. This is going to be interesting to watch what happens in the House of Representatives. New House Speaker, of course, Mike Johnson coming in, and this deciding to take that big budget of money that they're going to send to the Middle East and break it up. And I really think we'll probably cover it more on the show tomorrow, but they're going to break up the spending budget to Ukraine and Israel. They want to separate them so that means how much money can we not send to Ukraine now? Well, we'll stop sending money to Ukraine and we will continue to send money to Israel. And that's what the House of Representatives will take up on Wednesday when they're back in session. So I think, Ukraine could literally be out of money coming up soon here if Congress gets its way.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about this war on Israel and how it really is antithetical to the PR campaign that they've been launching for the last 20 years to tell them that they are not a warring place. They are not a place divided by skin color and religion. That's kind of all out the window. Seems like that was a bad investment. But let me tell you what is a good investment is Stamps.com. They are the sponsor of our show today. Now, you may know that after Halloween comes Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's time to think about shipping. Did you forget to add Stamps.com to your holiday wish list last year? Well, you still can. Stamps.com has been helping businesses like yours save time and money during the holiday rush for 25 years with easy access to USPS and UPS services and premium rates for all of your postage needs. You can take care of everything on the go with Stamps.com. If you need a package pickup, you can schedule it with Stamps.com, or if you're selling things online, you get premium discounts and supplies at your fingertips. And if you're running low on supplies, you can order mailing supplies and shipping labels and even printers from the supply store. So right now, give your business the gift of Stamps.com so your mailing and shipping is covered this holiday season. Sign up with our promo code REDACTED for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter the code REDACTED. All right.
And again, thanks to all of our new subscribers here today. Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. Again, if you do subscribe with our new graphics up there, see, it'll pop right up on the screen. Right. Well, but anyway, subscribe and do it. And it'll pop right up there on the screen. It's Philip's playing around with all the new buttons.
I forgot to update that. I forgot to update that. So
it's been a whole weekend of like tweaking buttons and fixing all of this stuff. So anyway, bear with us, but this is awesome. I love the new graphics. And so thanks to all of your great feedback, by the way. Our team worked really, really hard to bring you a great show.
All right. Well, Israel has spent billions of dollars to rebrand itself as the gay capital of the world, one of the most progressive places, a European-like city. And then all of that went basically up in smoke with this war and this current conflict. Now, here is one of Brand Israel's first and major spokespeople. You may recognize this person, the star of Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. This was part of a campaign, a Maxim feature, featuring Gadot and also 4 other well-oiled, muscular men who were there to represent Israel's flourishing gay community and also nightlife and sexy appeal. Now you have to wonder if this branding of Israel as this progressive, sexy place is what Ben-Gurion had in mind when he launched the Israeli nation, the Jewish state. But again, if you see that picture, you can tell, Clayton says, I don't mind you bringing that picture of Gal Gadot. She looks beautiful. She wears red lipstick like nobody else, right? But again, this idea that Israel is like a sexy place, a place that's cosmopolitan, a place where women are dressed like that and look like that. Now, as the Jerusalem Post says, Tel Aviv could be counted as the gay capital of the world. Who guessed Tel Aviv when we asked earlier what is known as the gay capital of the world because of a high concentration of people who are gay who live in that city.
Also LGBTQ+, and those people who are seeking trans surgeries, flooding into, at the beginning of the war on October 7th, when this all really unfolded, a lot of trans activists, a lot of trans people seeking surgeries and so forth were worried, of course, where the medications come from in Israel or being able to fly into Israel and to get trans surgeries. It's a really a center place for this.
It's a hotbed for a lot of the cultural things that the United States likes to be known for. And in fact, earlier this summer, Abigail Schreier, the author of Irreparable Damage, which is a book a best-selling book on trans ideology. It's critical of trans ideology. She went to speak in Israel, and it was standing room only, because these issues are hotly debated all over the world. So I don't want to present Israel as just this place where like trans ideology is blindly accepted. People do question gender ideology all over the world.
You mean people came out to support Abigail Schreier's research?
Her research that is gender critical. Yeah. So this is a debate that happens there. Now, all of this came from an expensive campaign called Brand Israel. It was a campaign funded by the Israeli government, launched when the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Prime Minister's office, and the Israeli Ministry of Finance concluded years of consultation with American marketing firms that did this research and marketing consultation for them for free. Now, post-Zionist academic Ilan Pappé summarized this project in his book, The Idea of Israel, and he took this from their website because a lot of this is gone now and you can't find it anymore. So these two highlights are how Brand Israel said that they wanted to represent themselves. They say misrepresentations of Israel are rampant in the media. Ordinary citizens across the globe see Israel cast as yet another violent nation in a region steeped in unrest and war. Well, that didn't age well, did it? Conversations taking place in print and on television and in the blogosphere often regard the Arab-Israeli conflict as both all-consuming and myopic. The diversity and excitement of Israel's society is subsumed by 20-second sound bites focusing on only one aspect of the Israeli story. So Brand Israel aims to change that conversation. You see at the bottom, the Israeli Foreign Ministry said that he would rather have articles in the style section on Israel than a front page story. So you see where they're going with this, right? They want to present themselves as like a place where you go to visit for culture. In fact, Israel has often consulted with China on how to promote tourism. They just don't know how to get people to see them in the way that they want them to be seen, thus this campaign. One of those efforts from Brand Israel, this is a campaign we're going to talk about, included Out in Israel, the gay parade that happened in San Francisco in 2010. They thought that they could, be an awesome way to show that Tel Aviv is like San Francisco with free-loving gay culture. Only it didn't exactly work. Look at how the Bay Area responded to this. The festival was accused of pink washing. Do you know what that means? Pink washing?
No.
It means you use gay rights as a distraction from other issues. We could liken it to the word sports washing, when like the Olympics were accused of sport washing because you're unifying countries through sport that maybe should otherwise talk about substantive issues. So if you're pink washing, you're using gay rights to mask over a serious issue. So for example, does your product cause cancer? Doesn't matter. You got a gay spokesperson, right? That's pink washing. What protesters were saying is you don't get human rights points for gay love if you still can't solve the issues with Palestinians. Now, this gay rights issue has been weaponized as a way to delegitimize the very existence of Palestinians. I noticed this in 2021 when war escalated between Gaza and Israel, and comedian Jill Kargman blasted gay people for supporting Palestinians. Jill Kargman, she had a show on Bravo called Odd Mom Out. She's a comedian. She's also, I think, like married to Drew Barrymore's brother or something. I really like her, but when she wrote this in 2021, I was very confused by this because she said anyone speaking on behalf of oppressed Palestinians were making her blood simmer. So she posted on Instagram, I support Israel's rights to defend itself. And P.S. to some of my gay friends who keep posting against this, Israel is the only country in the Middle East that supports LGBT rights. She says these 3 gay men who she's been friends with went completely batshit, asserting that I was ignoring human rights. Why would the wokesters pick Palestine as their trendy cause when Hamas wouldn't allow them to be gay? My dudes, while Tel Aviv is packed with rainbow flags, you'd be legit stoned on the other side. Israel is the only country in the Middle East with Pride Weekend. And she goes on about, like, if you try to wear a Dua Lipa bikini, you could be murdered for shaming your family. Now, I find this to be a pretty bad faith argument because it means that gay people don't have the right to speak about human rights in places that don't support gay rights. Like all gay people should think alike. And if there's a population that doesn't accept your lifestyle, you should not accept them either. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
Right.
Like, it's very disingenuous. Because you're gay, you must think this way because you wouldn't be allowed in Palestinian lifestyle.
Right. There's things, of course, in Gaza that you, or Palestine, that you don't agree with that is happening to those people. So you speak out. And, oh, yes, you wish that they had maybe better gay rights in that area, but they don't. But you're still standing up for human rights.
Right. So, for instance, what I'm wearing right now is not allowed, like, in certain places in the Middle East. But I don't want them to be bombed out of existence because of that, right? Because I can't dress this way. Go ahead, David. What were you going to say?
Well, it's the same thing as, like, black people are supposed to be Democrats. It's the exact same
It's
thing.
very much like that. Yeah. So I have seen this, the fact that Tel Aviv is so pro-gay and pro-LGBT and Palestinian life is not, as a way to delegitimize that lifestyle, that, I guess, that community, and say, well, see, why are we fighting for them? They shouldn't exist because they're not progressive enough in gay rights, which, again, is a very bad faith argument. It means that anybody who doesn't accept your lifestyle, whatever that be, kind of person who wears tights, or a kind of woman like I am that doesn't wear a hijab, then I should be against communities who would make me wear a hijab, because I'm not, right? Now, another brand Israel project is called the David Project. It was a college outreach program that went to universities around the U.S. to promote Israel as a place of technological and medical advancements. That's very valid, right? It's to sort of tour around to universities and talk about scientific accomplishments. I don't deny them that. Another brand Israel project has the government offering paid trips to Israel to winners of the 2017 Academy Awards, a trip that was reportedly worth $55,000. Now, apparently, according to Reuters, those trips were extended, the invitations were extended to Leonardo DiCaprio, Sylvester Stallone, Mark Rylance, Kate Blanchett, Jennifer Lawrence, Matt Damon, and Kate Winslet. None of them went on this trip after the hashtag Skip the Trip started trending, and it became apparent that being a brand ambassador for Israel was not a great career move for these. So then they decided to go after Super Bowl winners to see if maybe they could change the slogan, "I'm going to Disneyland," to "I'm going to Israel." That also did not work. In 2007, Michael Bennett from the New England Patriots decided not to meet then President Trump because of politics after winning the Super Bowl. But when it came out that he and 11 other NFL players would be going to Israel on a paid trip by Brand Israel, he pulled out of the trip and posted this on X: "I'm not going to Israel," and a photo of Martin Luther King Jr. So another Brand Israel project is called Israel 21C. It's tasked with promoting the good things that Israel does, like the world's largest vegan festival. Take a look.
And there's no stopping us right now. I feel so close to you right now.
All right, that's good. Okay, so that's nice too, but the brand has specifically been told that they can't mention Palestinians or the conflict at all while they are being brand ambassadors. Ilan Pappé, the post-Zionist author I talked about earlier, he makes the joke that this is all like a Faulty Towers episode where John Cleese is trying not to mention World War II to his German guests. So he ends up just doing that all over the place because it's something that obviously you have to discuss when you are discussing Israel. So all of this to say is all of this brand work going into all of this sort of fancy Israeli style is just all out the window with taxpayer dollars now that this conflict is front and center. And that's the only thing that now we're talking about with Israel. No one's talking about fancy vacations to Tel Aviv right now, right? It's just a great example of what you resist persists, right? And I don't want to say that I don't think Israel is cosmopolitan. I've never been there, or that I don't think that, it's a great place to live for many people. I'm not saying that at all. I support no government in this conflict, only civilians. But all of this effort to rebrand Israel as a progressive place with naked Gal Gadot and a gay haven and vegan festivals in order to distract from race wars just shows us that those things became louder because we were trying to ignore them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if those marketing firms had put the same efforts into a diplomatic solution, perhaps they wouldn't have had to try to host football players or Oscar winners.
Right.
It's just a shame to put so much glamour on top of such a rotten problem that will not go away.
And, to people in the chat saying, well, why won't you talk about Hamas? Well, this specific story is not about Hamas. And other people in the chat saying, I don't, people are saying, I don't support the American government. Why in the hell would you support the Israeli government? They're all corrupt. And I totally get that. I see.
I could give you a dissertation if you'd like about the ways that this American State Department, runs propaganda throughout the world. That's not the purpose of this program. This program is talking about all of the ways that Israel has tried so hard to rebrand itself as a place that is not warring. And now the opposite has happened. That's the point of this segment.
Our Health, thank you for your super chat. Our Health says, this person is referring to, what's her name from Odd Mom Out?
Jill Cargman.
Jill Cargman. Our Heath says here in the super chat, says, I see her point because all the gender-bending leftists are jumping on the side of Palestine, despite the fact that the Muslim extremists who run it have no respect for the human rights of any LGBTQ humans. They literally stone them.
I think that's a gross generalization of Islam, though. I mean, okay, Muslim extremists. Yes, I missed that word. Okay.
Yeah, so Muslim extremists.
Extremists.
Oh, for
yes.
sure. Yeah, I mean, Hamas as a terrorist organization. Yes. Okay. Absolutely. We've covered Hamas extensively here on the show and the terrorist attacks. So, but absolutely, I think that's a great point. But it is interesting. But can you also, Heath, say that all leftists are just jumping on the Palestinian bandwagon? Maybe. I don't know that you can make a gross generalization about leftists jumping on it. I mean, are you hearing?
Right.
I mean, think about Congress. So very few voices like in Congress are coming out to support the Palestinian.
Ilhan Omar is.
That's about it. I mean, I'm just saying, who else really? I mean, you have Christians being killed in Palestine. I mean, thousands of Christians are under attack right now. Where is anybody talking about that? Neocons love killing Christians. Think about what they did in Iraq. Think about the decimation of Christians in Iraq with Dick Cheney's wars and George W. Bush's war in Iraq. So there's no comments about that. I don't see. Maybe they are. Maybe leftists are jumping all over it. I don't know. David, go ahead.
Well, what I've personally seen and just following on X and everything is this really fractured both parties. You have now a division in both parties with what we should be doing, because when Biden made the announcement of what he was going to do in Israel, that went against a huge swath of Democrats that were like, no, we're with Palestine. And so we've seen some big fractures. And I honestly think that's a good thing, because now people will start questioning more whoa, what have we been following?
Yeah. And, when you talk about humanitarian causes, I don't know how many of you were asked to fundraise for the children of Ukraine in March of 2022. I am waiting for, my school's communities to ask me for, I don't know, a bottle of Tylenol or a blanket or a car seat for any Palestinians. Nothing so far. Maybe my phone's been turned off.
I was at the airport. I was at Gatwick Airport in London, and I love when you got off the airport out of the baggage claim. There's a big sign that says Ukrainian Help Desk. Mm-hmm. If you're a Ukrainian, country that we NATO destroyed, we have a Ukrainian help desk if you're fleeing that area, I guess. But I don't see the other signs for Somalia, Yemen. I mean, all these other areas that we, disrupt, but we're very focused on Ukrainians.
Right.
I love Intellivision Master in the chat says, why is Redacted anti-sensitivity? That's exactly right. We're not snowflakes here. Someone just said, and it scrolled past me, but someone just said their husband is an American trapped in Palestine. In Gaza specifically, right? Yeah, sorry, it scrolled past me here. I'd love to know what is happening there. And no, we've covered this in Canada, of course, where, you have Muslims who are saying, keep your ideology out of our children's lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't push your gay agenda on my family as a Muslim. We don't want that. That's not what we believe. We believe marriage is between a man and a woman. Why are you, Justin Trudeau government, pushing down this religion, these ideas into our throat? So absolutely, we've covered that here on the show, and Christians were even slow to that in Canada, finally came on and joined Muslims to say, yeah, keep this away from our families. Like, this is, why are you pushing these agendas on us?
Right.
So it's not just extremists who believe that, right?
Yes. And again, my point of showing you all of this sort of branding was that Israel wanted to be seen as a peaceful place. So I'm just wondering, did their leaders not get the memo that their, culture department and foreign affairs department is trying to present them as a peaceful place that does not go to war with Palestinians, and then now they're all in. So that money for those campaigns are pretty much out the window.
And you're right.
I mean, they pretty much just...
Sorry, KN Kieran, thank you for your super chat, says, not true, the Pope has spoken about it. Yeah, you're right about that. Pope Francis, excuse me, losing my voice, I'm getting sick here, spoke yesterday about that and called for a ceasefire and said war is a defeat. No war is good. There's no good war. There's never been a good war, right? So you're right about that the Pope did say that. But what other Christian leaders are coming out saying, hey, a lot of Christians are being killed right now in Gaza. They're being slaughtered, actually. Where are the Christian leaders in the United States coming out and talking about this? It'd be interesting to hear. I don't really hear any of them talking about it. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, like, Israel's basically like, well, we're going to spread peace and democracy the same way the United States does with war. That's how peace and democracy is spread, obviously.
Yeah. R. Heath, thank you for your super chat. Says, you're absolutely right about the Christians. It's the governments of the world decimating all human rights decimating all human rights and finding ways to divide us all. We must not fall for it. Yeah, as Christians get slaughtered as well. All right, we've got more news to get to. Thank you for the super chats. We'll take more of your super chats here in just a moment. Here, we're going to cover what the Justice Department is up against now, being sued over their collusion over social media to censor Americans and to try to silence voices. That we will cover on the show. Also, there is a plan in place to assassinate the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad. The United States has been trying to assassinate him for years and failed. And now there's a renewed effort to do it, and bombings in Syria over the past 48 hours. We will have Syrian journalist Kevork Almassian on to tell us about the very latest in that country. So we will get there. But first, let me pull up my notes here. Let's talk about something that's really close to my heart, which is family and financial security. The last few years have been filled with a lot of uncontrollable, unpredictable events. So when it comes to investing and figuring out what's right for your family, I trust our friends over at Moomoo. Now, it's a Silicon Valley-based online trading platform. It's my favorite app for trading stocks, where I buy a lot of my commodity stocks. If I invest in oil, I invest in gas companies, I invest in uranium, I invest in minerals companies, hard assets, and I do it using this app most of the time. And if I want to trade options, ETFs, all of those things, there's no commissions, there's no account minimums, no hidden fees. And the best part is, if you sign up right now, you're going to get a free SoFi stock. Yes, SoFi. You'll get a free SoFi stock, plus you'll get 15 other stocks as well. So 16 free stocks just for signing up. All of this is completely free and easy to access when you get inside of Moomoo, making Moomoo a solid choice for beginners who are just learning how to trade. Advanced investors also will love it because there's all sorts of additional bells and whistles. I set alerts for different companies that I'm watching, earnings reports and different things. I want to see what they're doing in the market, how the broader market is going right now. And if it's really, really great. They have level 2 quotes and other bells and whistles that you pay for on other services. So if you sign up now, you get 16 free stocks plus that free SoFi stock. All you need to do is download the app using our link, which is redacted.inc/Moomoo. That's redacted.inc/Moomoo. And you'll get keep all your funds at that level for like 60 days and enjoy your free stocks. Again, the link is right there. It's redacted.inc/Moomoo, and we'll have links in the description below if you missed the link. Again, redacted.inc/Moomoo.
Well, the Justice Department is being sued because they won't cop to payments that the U.S. government made to Twitter. This is a story about the censorship industrial complex. We know in the U.S. we have expanding power of military, the military industrial complex. We also have the biopharmaceutical, it's not rolling off the tongue today, the biopharmaceutical industrial complex. Now we have the censorship industrial complex. It's the expanding power of censorship as taken by media companies to control and expand their power and make money. So we know that the government paid Twitter money to reimburse them some of their legal costs. This came from some of the early Twitter files. We've had these for almost a year now. They came out last December from journalist Michael Schellenberger. Here was that revelation. Recall this email, internal email from someone at Twitter saying, Jim, this is Jim Baker, former government employee Jim Baker, who became lead counsel at Twitter. Hey, Jim, guess what? This program instituted a reimbursement program for our legal process response from the FBI. Prior to the start of the program, Twitter chose not to collect under this statutory right of reimbursement for the time spent processing requests from the FBI. But now, hey, guess what? We collected $3 million. Look at that. Since October 2019, that figure is $3,415,323. Sorry. $3,415,323. This money is used for LP and things like, well, these things, training, tooling, blah, 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 right? So here Twitter is saying they made over $3 million from the FBI because they did things the FBI wanted them to do. We showed you those. We saw them in the original Twitter files. They were when the government said, hey, here are some, people who are critical of vaccines or mask mandates or government lockdowns. Can we downrank them? Can we take their channels down? Can we take down these specific tweets, even true things such as if you have COVID, you have had natural immunity that may be superior to a vaccine? Those things were taken down at the behest of the government. Same things happened around other topics, war in Ukraine, Hunter Biden's laptop. We can go on and on. We won't go through all the evidence again. Now, the way the Twitter files explained this was that this was, quote, compensation for the time expanded handling software and data requests from the FBI during the period of October 2019 through February of 2021. Now, is that it? Or is that bad enough? Or is there more? Well, what we want to know then is why, how did they categorize this? Because basically it's a pay for play, Twitter doing the government's bidding. Now, this is a great example of what author Carol Roth says in her book, The War on Small Business. The very reason the government hates small business is because they cannot concentrate power in small businesses the same way they do in big businesses. So this is a textbook example of the government concentrating power through Twitter, Facebook, Google, Instagram, Pinterest, right? You can pull just a few strings, but if there were many small businesses, we can't pull all those strings if you're the big, powerful government. Now, a group called Judicial Watch, a DC-based watchdog group, asked for records about these payments last December when the Twitter files were first released, and they have received the runaround from the government ever since. As soon as the Twitter files were released, they filed this request for documents under a Freedom of Information Act, and they have not been able to get it all the way until now. We're almost a year later. So now they're suing. Here's the case that was filed in the District Court of Columbia earlier this month. Now, they're not seeking money. They're asking a court to compel the Justice Department to cough up the documents. Here is a little summary of the runaround they've been on. So December 24th, they submitted the FOIA request. January 12th, the FBI acknowledged it and advised that they had assigned it a request number. January 30th, they said, we can neither confirm nor deny the existence of these records. February 7th, the plaintiff submitted an appeal. Later that same day, they got an appeal number, at least, if we go on to the next document. In May of this month, they were informed that as a result of discussions between FBI personnel and OP, they had remanded the plaintiff's request to the FBI for further review. So they're not able to get what they're looking for. So as of this date, the deadline has come and gone, and so they filed a lawsuit. They're asking the court to make them cough up these documents. So what do you think? They're saying they cannot confirm or deny. That says to me they're there. They have internal, and it's probably quite damning. Like, hey, maybe we should, because we're asking Twitter to do a lot of work for us, maybe we should offer to reimburse them, right? That's bad enough,
right,
don't you think?
Yeah.
Or is there something even more smoking gun? Like, how did this come about? Who decided to pay them? And does this influence the fact that Twitter complied to censor Americans' freedom of speech, which is their constitutional right?
It is an amazing thing to think that a third-party social media company was paid millions of taxpayer dollars to silence
censor said taxpayers.
Yeah, to silence taxpayers, basically, and to silence political speech, and to silence political opponents. Because as we know in certain lawsuits, of course, Dr. Ayaduri, who of course was censored and basically pushed out of the Massachusetts Senate campaign, of course, Dr. Shiva Ayaduri, like we know basically on his actual court cases that these things were happening. The absolute censorship by the Biden administration to push him out.
Right.
So these things, it's unbelievable that they would use. And for people that are sitting there saying they would never do this, I mean, just looking at the weaponizing of the IRS in Cincinnati, in Ohio, going after political opponents. So
of course, they
absolutely are doing this.
Yes, that's true. And, we're seeing this now play out in a Supreme Court case that the Supreme Court has only just picked up about whether or not the government can continue to do this. But at least we now know that they did. This same case may play into that case when we learn about why, for the censorship that was done around the pandemic, why social media was paid for it. I believe we also have some information about how Facebook received money too, but I'd have to dig for that. But again, why? Why are we paying social media to do what we ask them to if you're the FBI?
Well, and also how it seems like they're just getting away with it. Like, what is the recourse here? Just being sued? I mean, why? If you're the Department of Justice, who's over top of you?
Right, and
who can call any sort of a who can prosecute you if you're the Department of Justice? Merrick Garland, like who's coming after the Attorney General of the United States?
Well, that's a good question too about the Attorney General and other cases about Trump fraud. Like if the Justice Department goes to Deutsche Bank and says, we need some information about Donald Trump's bank records from, whatever, you need to give it to us and we're giving you this subpoena. Do they pay them for their time searching those records then? Because they want to, does everyone get paid for helping out the FBI? That's usually not the way it works.
No.
That you pay anybody who is a party to a case or a witness to a case or a business that you subpoena. So why just social media?
I don't know. It's a great question. Let us know if you have any answers to that in the comments below. We've got more news to get to here on your Monday. But I first wanted to kind of just take a moment here. We have some folks in the chat room. We have a lot of people here, almost, 30 across Twitter. Twitter, YouTube, Rumble. Like 30, 40,000 of you watching us. So nice to see all of you. And Leah Lofty says that her husband is trapped in Gaza. Her American husband is trapped in Gaza. When have you heard from him last, Leah? What is the status now? Have you been able to speak with him? I know that I think Israel pretty much tried to stop all communications coming out of their cellular service and so forth. So I'm not sure if you've been able to communicate. Have you been able to get any sort of updates about that? Let us know here in the chat. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Mrs. Hancock is saying, Leah, is your husband able to get communication from Gaza right now? The chat goes by very quickly. So if you can grab it, let me know, David, or anybody, what her response is. But we got a lot of different super chats here. So I just wanted to acknowledge. Thank you guys for all of your kind words. Sham Hishman.
She said again, my American husband is trapped in Gaza. So we're just getting the same. It was repeated.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we hear you. It might be a little bit of a delay. I don't know. on that. So just wanted to acknowledge your super chats. Thank you guys so much for your kind words and your super chats. Really appreciate it. And I just want to address something else too. You know, we are supported by you guys and our sponsors who've been with us for years. And we some of these sponsors are pretty darn brave, by the way. And I saw someone, Car Life Daily said, the show is 90% fluff and 10% ads. And actually, no, our show is about 70 to 90 minutes long. Almost all of that is news. Tons of research that we spend all day doing and interviews with journalists from around the world. And so we work very, very hard to bring you a great show that you're not going to see on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, quite honestly. And we're trying to give you different perspectives on the world that you're not going to see other places. We also try to cut through the propaganda here and ask questions. That's our show. And we have usually about 3 sponsors per show that we try to space them out throughout the show. That's how we're able to pay our staff. That's how we're able to do this show, to be honest with you. Pay for our servers. So when I worked on Fox and Friends, which was a 3-hour morning show on Fox News, we had hundreds of ads, hundreds per show. We have 3 on this show. And we try to keep them very short and sweet. But they are sponsors that we use personally. Like I use Lear Capital, I use Mumu, we use Stamps.com. We use these companies very often, and that's why we have them here on the show. So we hope that you can deal just for like 30 to 45 seconds with one of our sponsors that we use and we actually think could bring you great value. And that's how we're able to do the show. Honestly, we wouldn't be able to do it without them. YouTube demonetizes us almost all the time. Almost every show we do, we get demonetized by YouTube. So just so you understand like what independent media is up against, we're up against the beast of billionaires and censorship. Channels being shut down left and right. So, you know, they're probably going to come for us soon anyway. So we'll continue to do what we do here for as long as we can. Rumble has been amazing in supporting us. So again, guys, independent media is under attack. And when I see a comment like that, I got to say, it just gets under my skin a little bit. I mean, it kind of pisses me off, and I'm allowed to be human and let you know that it bothers me. Like, we work all day to bring you a great show. And
yeah, you spend the weekend then reading books on Ukraine and Russia and Israel. You do that then and do better if you can do better.
Yeah, I mean,
do it.
Car Life Daily, if it was really bothersome to you and you want to, do your own show where you spend hours upon hours of research and on the phone with journalists and talking to people in war zones and doing what you do, then by all means, I'll watch you, Car Life Daily. If you've got a better show and you're able to do it and you're able to support a team of people and all of that, please do it. But I'm just going to say that. I'm not going to say it again for a while, but I just, that bothered me.
And really quick, it's like people don't understand, like the advertisers they are supporting our show in spite of the information that we're talking about. And just in case because YouTube unsubscribes people every month, and they also at willy-nilly just shut off our monetization. So if it wasn't for those advertisers, I mean, you guys just have to sit there and watch an ad. It'd be another reason we wouldn't be able to keep the show going.
Yeah, I mean, really, they come after us left and right. You read their terms of service, and they come after you constantly. I mean, the Blaze Media, just saw Glenn Beck the other day. He's like had it. They just like launched some new program because he's like, Google comes after us on a regular basis, shutting down independent media. So guys, I'm just telling you, that's what we're up against. So if you can deal with, in a 70 to 90 minute show that we do every night here, if you can deal with like our 3 sponsors that are about 45 seconds in length, maybe you just grab a cup of coffee and then just like, grab a tissue, whatever you want to do for a few seconds while we tell you about one of our sponsors.
Or visit the website, see if it's something you might want to know about at the very least, because again, they're putting themselves out there. It's not like you would hate it a lot more if we were saying this stuff and then saying this ad brought to you by Pfizer right. or GlaxoSmithKline or Raytheon. It's
amazing because we've actually had sponsors who found out what we do on the show. They're like, we won't sponsor you. Like we've had
sponsorships pulled because of our
war coverage. Yeah, they're like, no, we're pro war. We can't support Redacted, and they pulled their sponsorship. And we're like, okay, fine. Well, we didn't know that you were that way. So anyway, I just wanted to say that and get that off my chest because it was bothering me, and I'm allowed to have a conversation with you guys because I love you guys. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys for supporting us. So guess what, here, guys? I'm going to tell you about one of our sponsors for 45 seconds. Our friends over at Lear Capital. if, you saw Rand Paul speaking over the weekend, and he said that the United States cannot afford to send hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine and Israel. We're literally mortgaging the future of our children. We are printing trillions of dollars that we do not have. And he said it. We're devaluing the currency in the United States. So the reason Natalie and I are such big supporters of gold and silver, did you see silver today? Up nicely. Gold set to hit $2,000 an ounce. If you have some savings that's sitting in a bank account in US dollars, you might want to consider converting it to gold and silver. And our friends at Lear Capital can help you do that. They can actually send you gold bars, gold coins, silver coins, the silver bars. I have one of them right here. I can't find it. Yeah, here it is. Here's like one of the gold coins, from Lear Capital. Sorry, it's a little out of focus because my camera. There we go. It's, you can get them stored in your own home safe, or you can have it stored off-site and protected. Either way, it's totally up to you. But if you have like $1,000 in savings that's in US dollars, you might want to consider converting it into gold or silver. And our friends at Lear can help you do that. So they have an 800 number. It's right there on your screen. Give them a call and say, hey, you watch Redacted. You want to thank them for supporting independent media, and thank you for what they do to support journalists. And you're interested in buying $500 worth of gold or silver, and tell me about it. And they'll talk with you on the phone. 1-800-613-3557, or go to learredacted.com is the website. Again, call their 800 number, 1-800-613-3557, or go to learredacted.com. I spoke with the team from Lear last week, and they said, we love you guys, and we're excited for 2024. They said we're so happy to be a part of the Redacted community, and that just means the world to us. Think about the advertisers that would say, no way are we joining up with Redacted. And I want to thank Lear Capital for supporting us and being a longtime supporter of what we do here. So if you guys are talking around the coffee table, around the kitchen table about gold or silver, give our friends a call. 1-800-613-3557. Why is the United States once again bombing Syria? It seems like it's one of their favorite pastimes, placing warships right on their doorstep in the Middle East. And is the United States actively trying to assassinate President of Syria, Bashar al-Assad? It sure seems that way. Syrian journalist Kevork Almassian, who of course covers geopolitics and does an amazing job at Syriana Analysis. Kevork, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Clayton. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's talk about the Assad piece in a second, the assassination plot against Assad. But first, obviously over the past 24 hours, additional bombings we've seen on Syrian targets, resistance fighters firing back against those attacks against United States positions. What do we know about those latest attacks?
First of all, we know the claim from the Pentagon that F-15s and F-16s probably participated in bombing what is called Al Bukamal border crossing. And Al Bukamal border crossing is essential for Syria because the United States occupies what is called Al Tanaf border crossing. The United States has forces on the borders between Jordan and Iraq. They're blocking Syria's trade routes between these countries and also the connectivity between Tehran, Baghdad, and Damascus. Therefore, the Syrians, after liberating the deserts from ISIS with the help of the Russians and the Iranians, they opened a new border crossing in Al Bukamal. And this Bukamal is the only route now that Syria can do business with its neighboring countries, and especially on the eastern side, and also having this Iranian leverage in the region. So the Americans want to hit this border crossing in order to block any access of Iran to this connectivity, as I mentioned, of this alliance between Baghdad, Tehran, and Damascus, and also Beirut. This is essential life-saving route for the Syrians, so they protect it. But the Pentagon says that they are bombing what is called Qud, Iranian-backed militias. Those are not Iranian militias. They are Syrians, and they fight under the Syrian army formations. And the Syrian.
But the New York Times today, Kevork. So then you're disagreeing with the front page of the New York Times today, which, as you know, is a bastion of journalism. And really, we hold it up as the greatest newspaper in the world. And of course, the New York Times today says that these are Iranian, literally in their headline, Iranian-backed proxies. So these are all Iranian. They're clearly trying to tie this to Iran. So you disagree with the New York Times, Kevork. This is shocking news.
It's like calling for example, the Israeli army a CIA-backed militia, or calling the Israeli army a Pentagon-backed army. It's the same. Syria is supported by Russia, is supported by Iran. Syria buys weapons from Iran and Russia, and it gets also support, political and military support from them. So the justification that those are Iranian-linked or Iranian-backed militias, first of all, under international law, it doesn't give any justification for the Americans to bomb Syria to begin with. Secondly, these forces who were bombed are Syrian forces, and if you want to say they are backed by Iran, this is a political cover for bombing Syria. But on a legal base, if you want to speak legally, Syria has invited Russian forces to come, and also there is a strategic military alliance between Syria and Iran. So Iranians have advisors in Damascus, but they don't have combat forces in Syria. No, zero. The Iranians never sent fighting combat forces underground in Syria. They had their advisors and also military and intelligence support. All this bombing that happened there against Syrian forces and Abu Kamal border crossing, as I mentioned, it's a message to Syria, to Iran, and to the regional countries that if this war expands, the Gaza war expands, and if Hezbollah intervenes in this conflict, which seems to be coming closer and closer as we speak, because of the carpet bombing of the Gaza Strip and the clear plan of ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to the Sinai, it seems that Hezbollah will intervene soon in this conflict. If that happens, the Israeli side doesn't have the same combat readiness and experience as Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been fighting in Syria for 12 years, and they have sophisticated weaponry, unlike Hamas. Therefore, Americans will also intervene if that happens. If Americans intervene, what they're going to do is, if you check the map, because they have a military site in Tanaf border crossing, they will try to seal all the borders between Syria and Iraq so that there would be no access of Syria to Iraq and to Iran anymore. So this is the plan. But on the other side, the allies of Syria, they have sent a very clear message to the Americans by bombing the illegal occupation bases in Syria and in Iraq. Let's remember, the Iraqi parliament voted and asked for the American forces to leave the country, and they said no.
Right.
We're not.
In fact, not only no will we not leave, we're also going to build a second military base on oil fields. So we're not going to leave, even though you want us out of your country. We're going to build a second base on your oil fields.
And in Syria, the presence of the American forces is illegal, again, under international law. They are there since 2017, 2018 to occupy the oil fields, to disallow the Syrian government of using the revenues of the oil to reconstruct the country. This is the main purpose of so basically the forces who are in Syria are acting as pirates on Syrian territory. So any act of violence using force against American forces is permissible under international law. I'm a Syrian, and I don't any American to die in the course of this conflict. I want all the Americans to be in the United States unharmed and untouched. But if you come to my house and you are stealing my water and my oil, and if I use violence against you to kick you out of my home, then you have to ask the question, why am I at the first place in your home? This is the question that nobody asks. Look, Fox News never mentioned it, CNN, MSNBC, no one mentioned the fact that those forces in Syria to begin with are illegal under international law. Therefore, the use of force against them is permissible, but they don't give you this context. Otherwise, the people will start asking questions. What are we doing in Syria?
Right. Members of Congress have started asking that question, Matt Gaetz among others. Why are we in Syria? And it's been voted down, so the United States will continue to occupy Syria. I do want to ask you, before we talk about Assad, specifically about the Golan Heights. And of course, if Hezbollah intervenes in the north, what will Syria do with the Golan Heights? And of course, pushing out 2.3 million Palestinians into Egypt. As Scott Ritter just told us moments ago on the show, that would be a war crime, and Egypt will not tolerate that. And if Israel wants to get into a fight with Egypt, they will lose. So a lot of moving pieces right now. But take the Golan Heights piece. What does Syria do there?
Actually, there are sequences that we have to follow. If this conflict expands, the first thing we are going to see is Hezbollah intervention in two ways. One, we will see precision missiles being fired from the Hezbollah side against the settlements and against the military and installations, intelligence installations in Israel. The second thing, we will see ground incursion into the Israel. And as Scott Ritter said multiple times, by the way, he said that if Hezbollah wages such a ground offensive against northern Israel, if you compare it with Hamas, it will look like from a children playbook, because Hezbollah is very disciplined and very competent force. People forget the fact that Hezbollah is not only a political party anymore. They have over 100,000 soldiers. They believe in a doctrine, in a religion, and they also have a very long combat experience, unlike the Israelis. Last time Israelis fought was in 2006. And at the same time, the Hezbollah, they have air defense systems, they have anti-tank rockets, they have precision missiles, and also Yahond missiles. Yahond is only Syria has the Yahond missiles in the region. Yahond are the anti-ship cruise missiles. Those are very serious weapons. Therefore, we see all these American special forces going to Israel, and also from Germany. They are stationed in Cyprus. These are all indications that Israel cannot defend itself alone. Israel needs its allies if this war expands. Second, from the Syrian side, if the Hezbollah intervention happens, I believe that there will be rockets being fired also from the Syrian side, and then the Israelis will come and bomb Damascus. They will try to eliminate the strategic power of Assad in Damascus, and they have told this to the French. Yedeot Ahranot reported this, that the French delivered this message to Hezbollah, that if you intervene in this conflict, Israelis will assassinate Assad. So we will see there are two units, combat units ready from the Syrian side. They have been getting prepared since 2018 when Syria liberated these areas on the borders with Israel. Because remember, before 2018, for 3 to 4 years, the border between Israel and Syria was occupied by ISIS and by Al-Nusra Front. Both are Al-Qaeda offshoots. And there was not a single bullet being fired from Al-Qaeda or ISIS against Israel. In fact, the Israeli hospitals were full of the injured soldiers from Al-Qaeda and from ISIS. And even the former head of the Mossad, he was on Al Jazeera, he confessed and he said that they have given medical treatment to Al-Qaeda fighters in the Israeli hospitals, because for them this was a humanitarian thing to do back then. But we all know that wasn't the case. They wanted to use these forces against their mutual enemy back then. But when these territories were liberated, the Syrian side, with the collaboration and coordination with Iran and Hezbollah, they have formed new units, and those are called the Golan Liberation Units. And those are two units, in my opinion. They will be engaged in a ground offensive into the Golan Heights, which belongs to the Syrians, according to every UN Security Council resolution, in order to try to liberate it. I think the players in the region, they can see clearly that the United States is not in its peak of its power, and it's been involved heavily in the Ukraine war. They believe that this is an opportunity, probably also, to bring the United States into another costly war, which you can see that the Americans are printing hell of a money in order to sustain these two big wars in Ukraine and in Israel. And this is not in the interest of the Americans now to get involved in a big conflict, but the Israelis, they are definitely dragging the Americans into bigger conflict instead of calling for ceasefire. For example, in the Gaza Strip, today Hillary Clinton said his ceasefire is equivalent of helping Hamas. You're giving a service to Hamas if you call for a ceasefire, because the goal is quite clear. Ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, 2.2 million people to Sinai, and they're trying to bribe Egypt, telling them we can pay you $5 billion, $8 billion, $20 billion to house these people permanently. And this is just the second Nakba. I mean, 48 was clear that all these Palestinians who became refugees, this was the same way that they became refugees 70 years ago.
Let's talk about Assad. Let's talk about, you've been covering this on your show, which is the growing plot to assassinate President Bashar al-Assad. Can you talk about what you see in terms of reports about this and how this would unfold?
Yeah. First of all, I read this intelligence report on Yediot Ahranot, and it was translated to English. I was astonished that the Israelis are threatening Assad with assassination if Hezbollah intervenes in this conflict. So I started asking my contacts in Damascus, and they told me that they are very alarmed by these reports, and they take it very seriously, because there is a precedent of killing presidents and leaders in the region. They have killed Saddam Hussein in the most heinous way. You agree with him or not, that's a different thing, but it was a killing of a leader of a country. There is the incident of killing Gaddafi, again, by the NATO proxies. So they tried to kill Assad for 12 years. When ISIS was expanding and they were knocking the door of Damascus, John Kerry told the so-called Syrian opposition figures in a private meeting, and this was recorded and leaked by WikiLeaks, that they were watching the expansion of ISIS and they found it convenient for them because they wanted to pressure Assad. If ISIS managed to break into Damascus and the rockets of ISIS were falling around the presidential palace of Syria, what would have happened to Assad? You think they would have killed him, right? So they wanted for Assad to die in the past 12 years. So and now when the pro-Syria alliance emerged victorious, I do not rule out the possibility at all that they would try to kill Assad this time directly instead of trying to do it through the proxies. And a very good colleague of mine has very good contacts in the United States, in State Department, and also in the CIA. He was also asking around, and they told him clearly, like 2 months ago, since 2 months, they're thinking of getting rid of Assad and finishing the unfinished business in Syria once and for all, because they believe that the regime change war that has failed, and they thought that they can later pressure Assad through the sanctions. It's not working. And the Chinese are now striking deals with Assad. There is now a strategic partnership between China and Syria, and Syria will be on the Silk Road Initiative road. So they want to stop this. They don't want for Syria to emerge victorious and to reconstruct. So the other thing that I mentioned, the report of Yediot Ahranot, the former MI6 agent Alistair Cook, he also mentioned the same information exactly, and he said that he is highly alarmed and this is very worrying for him, that the Israelis are thinking in this way. And unfortunately, I'm saying, in the current mentality that is governing Israel, and from the statements that we see and we hear every day, what they're speaking about the Palestinians and what they are planning for the Palestinians, it's clear-cut psychopathy, in my opinion, and I do believe that they would not hesitate to assassinate Assad if the opportunity rises for them.
Yeah, they've been, like you said, they've been trying to do it for years and have failed. And of course, over the past few weeks, you've seen a number of news reports saying that Assad has won in Syria. I saw an Al Jazeera piece on this. I saw Axios. I saw other saying, now that Assad has finally won Syria. He's made these partnerships. That this is a clear indication that Assad has overcome these assassination attempts and everything that the West has kind of thrown at them. And I don't think they like that. I don't think they like these headlines showing that Assad has beaten them.
Actually, they are very aggressive in their approach toward Assad, and there is always an appetite for war. Right. In Washington, D.C., there is always appetite for war because the economy is based on war, and they make profits when there is war. And also, they are very arrogant in a way that they don't accept defeat. And the examples in the past in Iraq and how they killed Saddam and Gaddafi. And when a president like Syria, a smaller country than in Libya and in Iraq, with the help of his allies, he survived. This is for them humiliating. And we can see that the shift started to happen after the Syrian war in the balance of power. We started to see that Russia has become more emboldened, for example, to wage its special military offensive against Ukraine, because the Russians also gained their combat experience in Syria. They have tried their weaponry, they have tried their air force, and they have seen that the proxies of the United States are not invincible, and they can defeat them. And this was also emboldened Russia into going into Ukraine. And now we can see that this is a gradual change in the balance of power, and Syria played an essential role in it. So before the next elections in 2024, in my opinion, especially after the failed counteroffensive in Ukraine, which is another slap in the face of the establishment in the US, huge failure, tens of billions of dollars poured into Ukraine to just break through the first or the second defensive lines, and they couldn't do it. So they can't swallow these defeats, and in my opinion, they will try to achieve strategic victory in the Middle East before the next elections. Otherwise, in my opinion, after the next elections, we will see that the American power and the ability to project its power around the world will diminish, and they have to accept then the fact that they are not alone in the international system. If they achieve a victory in Syria, they may pretend that they can prolong the life of the empire. But if they can't do it now also in Palestine and in Syria, I think we are going to see the multipolar world in a shorter time than expected.
I think you're right about that. Kevork Almassian, always great to see you. His website, of course, his YouTube channel is Syriana Analysis. I encourage all of you to subscribe to it, follow him on Telegram as well. Always very insightful on all of these issues. Kevork, great to see you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clayton. It's a pleasure to be with you.
And thanks so much to Kevork for joining us. And thanks to all of you for subscribing and being a part of our community here. You know, it's free to subscribe to the channel or to follow us, whatever name you want to give it. That's totally free. But if you do want to join our Plus Club, our Plus community, you can absolutely do that as well. And for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism and support what we do here. So it's very simple. Just go to our website, redacted.inc, and click on the community button on the right side of your screen there, and then you get access to exclusive content, live streams that are only for Plus Club members. Yes, launching the book club, which we've already assigned the book. So hopefully you guys have been reading along with that and can join us at Natalie's book club. We did a live stream just for community members on Friday night as we were dialing in all of the new software and everything here for the show. It was a lot of fun to hang out with the community, and we just kind of hung out and talked. It was a lot of fun. So all sorts of exclusive content we're rolling out and really beefing up the Plus Club. So again, if you'd like to support us, you can. Again, the show is free otherwise, but if you want to, pay that membership fee to be a part of our great community here, you can. Just go to redacted.inc. It really supports us here. It really supports independent journalism, and we really appreciate it. And we'll be back here tomorrow, everyone, at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and with another live show. So thank you guys so much for joining us on this Monday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye, everyone.